Connecting Parents to Students' Digital Lives, episode 245.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Today, we're talking to Mike Daugherty from Ohio. Today, I'd like to do a show for my parents at my school as well as for parents around the country and make a resource for us to be able to share with parents, because we may filter at school, but our students are taking everything home. We may install things on their Chromebooks, but when they're on their phones, they are getting unfiltered access to the internet. Now, Mike, the other day, I had an 8th grader come in and say, "Oh, I heard about the dark web on a show. What is it, Miss Vicki? I've been looking it up." And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, please, don't, this is so bad. And, kids are innocent. And, do you think filters are important?
So I do. And I know that there's a lot of questions about privacy and ethics on this one. But again, with kids, they still, I feel like, need this. I still feel like they need some form of monitoring so parents can make sure that the kids are being safe online. Even really, really good kids make some bad choices at times. And I feel like the filters really help guide your child, especially as they go through those teen years and on off to college.
Well, they're so innocent. Sometimes they don't know that a word, just typing in a word, could be a bad choice. They just don't know better.
Exactly.
So you have 5 options that you have recommended to your parents, and we will include a link to this in the show notes. What's your first option for home filtering for parents?
So my first option, and by far my favorite option, is called Circle. It's actually Circle by Disney now. They were not a Disney company, but Disney purchased them in the last, 18 months. It's actually a device that you install at home. It's a physical device. You connect it to your home Wi-Fi, and then all the configuration is done through an app. It is extremely, extremely easy to use for parents. I feel like even those parents who are not very tech savvy can figure this one out. It's not hard to do at all. Parents are able to set time limits for usage by device or by child. So if you have 3 children, you can set different limits for each child. You can filter out content, again, on a per child basis. So if you want your older child to be able to do some things that maybe the younger kids should not, you can do that. They have a pause option, which I really like. So sometimes I know in my household, trying to get them to look up from the device or to just take a break can cause some trouble. So they've got a pause feature, which literally just pauses the internet on all of the devices. So no matter what they're doing, it just stops it. It's got a bedtime functionality in which certain devices stop connecting to the internet at a certain time of night. It's a great, great, great device. The other thing that I really like about it is they have a new product called Circle Go, which can be installed on their cell phone. So you can have the same functionality when they're not inside your 4 walls. It's a fantastic device. It's a little bit costly. It costs $99 one time. Again, I think it's well worth it.
Yeah, and the cell phone is particularly an issue because parents may have a filter at home and we may have a filter at school, but once they go on their data on their cell phone, typically they have unfettered access to the internet.
Sure. And Circle will tackle that for you so that even when they're on their data access, the content is still filtered.
So, Mike, what's our second option?
Number 2 is the Norton Family Premier. Norton has been around forever. I'm sure that your listeners have heard of Norton throughout the years. It's got a lot of similar features. But again, what I really like about this one is it's a little less expensive up front. It's $50 a year, but it updates constantly and it works on any gadget and on phones. Though, the one downside to it is you actually have to take their phone to install it, whereas on Circle, it just happens from the Circle device. But other than that, it's a great second option for families who just kind of want to dip their toes in, but don't want to spend that $100 up front.
And it does not have the pause feature, though, does it?
It does not. So that's one of the downsides to it is you don't have the ability to pause. The Family Premier is really more about blocking and setting time limits than anything else, whereas Circle gives you a lot more features just overall.
Yeah. Okay, what's our third option?
The third one is Nanny. Again, one of those ones that it's been around for years. I know, especially in the late 90s, it was really, really popular. It was one of the first ones to come out and allow you to kind of control your internet access at home. Again, website blockings, time limits, adjusted per child. The one thing that I really liked about Nanny that kind of stood out was that it has the option to mask profanity on sites for younger students. Oh. So if you know that you've got a student who's a little bit younger and they're surfing the web, if inappropriate word comes up, it automatically masks that so that the child doesn't see that word. Yeah, I thought that was a really nice feature that none of the other ones had. It's subscription based, so it's $60 a year. And again, you have to install it on each device. But again, a ton of really good reviews on that one.
Yeah. Okay. What's the fourth?
So number 4 is called Q Studio, and it's really, really, really similar to Norton Family Premier. Again, it has the ability to set limits. I really like the interface of Q Studio. It installs on phones and devices across the board. So Windows, Macs, Android, all of that. And it's got an app kind of interface, so you can see what they're surfing and where they're spending their time. So for example, I know that 20% of the time they're surfing, they're on social media, while 10% they're surfing, they're actually playing online games. So it really gives you a breakdown. So that was my big thing with Q Studio, is that you're able to kind of have a better idea of what your kids are looking at from a easy to view dashboard.
Cool. So what's our fifth?
The fifth one is free, but this one's a little bit tougher to use. It's called OpenDNS. So essentially what you're doing with OpenDNS is you're telling your computers in your house where things live on the internet. So essentially you go through your wireless router, and instead of pointing to your internet services provider's DNS, which is kind of like an internet phone book, you point to OpenDNS, and it gives you a ton of control. Again, it can be a little tricky to set up, but it allows you to block websites, turn things on and off. A lot of features. You just got to figure out how to use it. So again, for those tech savvy parents out there that aren't looking to spend some money, OpenDNS is a great place to start.
Yeah, you got to be a geek, right?
Yep. And along those same lines, there's a lot of wireless routers have built-in functionality as well. So if you're looking to upgrade your router and this is important to you, maybe look online and see what routers are out there that allow you to set some limits on your devices.
So, Mike, I know you give these options in your parent newsletter that you give to your parents. You let them make their choice because ultimately It's each parent's choice. But what do you use at your house? Because you have 3 kids.
I use Circle. Circle has been a huge fan since it came out. Again, I think what I really like about it is the ease of use. Like, for example, here's a great story, Vicki. I had a babysitter came over. And while we were out to dinner, she texted us and said, "Hey, what's the Wi-Fi password?" And we sent her the password and she hopped on. And the minute she hopped on, my filtering policy took effect. So I knew that even an outside visitor to my home wasn't getting unfiltered access to the internet. I trust her explicitly, but at the same time, it was great to see that. So I know that as kids come over and they bring their devices, like my 9-year-old son, his friends will come over with a device. I know they're still filtered when they're here. So it gives me that peace of mind as well.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, some people complain about filters because they say it slows down their devices and their computers. Have you noticed a slowdown?
I haven't noticed that at all. Again, I think the way it works from the technology behind the scenes, I don't feel like I've seen any slowdown whatsoever with any of them. I've tried Circle, I've tried Family Planner, and I've dabbled with Nanny back in the day, but I have not felt like there was any slowdown with any of them.
Wow. Well, that's great. So teachers, parents, administrators, this is a conversation that we should all have. I find it interesting sometimes that many parents are very adamant that schools have to have filters. And we do. We're legally required. We have to do that here in the United States. But they don't think about the filtering at home. And kids are, obviously at home a whole lot. So as we're responsible adults raising children in a digital age, particularly with things like the dark web out there, from my perspective, there's just a lot of things that kids are not ready for yet. And we want to protect them from those areas of just innocent curiosity in many cases. So consider, how are you going to filter, and make that decision intentionally, even if you decide to leave it open, to have those conversations with your kids so that you can decide what's right for your family. I do really hope that you will consider keeping your kids safe, and even with getting the rest at night, because that's actually a big deal. Is a lot of kids are sleep deprived, and it can make as much as a whole grade level impact on their grades if they're losing enough sleep. So thanks for listening. And I hope you'll have lots of interesting conversations in the break room and with your parents on this one. Hi, remarkable teachers. I just wanted to remind you about a couple of features that we've added behind the scenes on the 10-Minute Teacher to help you out. First of all, you can go to coolcatteacher.com/podcast. And we've put a search tool that lets you search by name and topic, so you can search all the past 245 episodes easily. You can also sign up to get every podcast show notes sent to your inbox. I also want to remind you that anytime you want to go to an episode of the 10-Minute Teacher, all you have to do is to go to coolcatteacher.com/ the letter E and the episode number. So, for example, today will be coolcatteacher.com/ e245. And that'll take you straight to the show notes for today. Now, usually most shows are posted around, exactly at 3 a.m. every morning. Typically, the show notes will go up around 6 a.m. each morning. And then the last thing I just wanted to ask for is if you like the 10-Minute Teacher, I would so appreciate if you would head over to iTunes and leave a review. Also, remember, we are on Spotify. So if you like to use Spotify, they've added a lot of podcasts there. You can go make a playlist of your podcast, and that's pretty cool too. So thank you so much for supporting the 10-Minute Teacher podcast and making it part of your morning commute or your busy day. We work really hard, and I do appreciate the emails and suggestions that you have for awesome educators to come on the show. Thank you so much for supporting the show and taking a listen, and I hope you'll find today very helpful.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com /podcast. Never stop learning.